everyone, welcome to the Python programming series. Begin with the determination to succeed, and the work is half done already. If you have decided to learn Python today, you've already taken the first and foremost step towards becoming a programmer. In this series, we'll be learning Python completely from scratch. If you're a student, a beginner, or someone who has never written a line of code before, this course is designed just for you. In this lecture, we will be discussing what is Python, why learn Python, its key features, and finally, we'll start with the basics of Python to build a strong foundation. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started. So, starting with what is Python? Python is a high-level language, which means that it is easy to read and write. Next, it is an interpreted language, which means that the code is run line by line. You don't need to save it in a separate file. It is a general purpose language as it is used in various fields like AI, automation, web, etc. So, moving on to a very important question. Why learn Python? It is because of its simple syntax and versatility. It is a versatile language which supports OOPs, functional and procedural styles. It has a large community it provides easy help and there are tons of standard libraries available. There's a lot of career scope if you learn Python because Python is a language which is used in fields like AI, machine learning, data science, and many more. Now, coming to the key features of Python. So, Python is a dynamically typed language, which means that there is no need to declare a variable or its type before using it. It is cross-platform, which means it works on Mac, Linux, Windows, everywhere. Then there are rich libraries like NumPy, Pandas, TensorFlow available. And then finally, it is a free and open source language. Now, let's start with some popular Python uses. So, Python is used in data science to analyze and visualize data, right? Next, it is even used in AI and machine learning for smart apps, right? So, in ML and AI for building smart apps. In web development, like Django and Flask for web apps, automation, scripting, in-game development. So, it is used in automation, scripting, even in game development. So, it has a vast use case, right? Developed in 1980s by Guido van Rossum. And this is a very important point to note that it evolved as a successor to ABC language. You all must be knowing by now that it is saved with .py extension. Always remember that it is a dynamically typed language, which simply means that you do not need to declare the variable or its type before using them anywhere, right? We would be discussing this in the later section, but for now, keep in mind that it is a dynamically typed language. Moving on to comments, right? So in Python, comments are defined with a hash symbol, right? For example, we write print hello world, right? So here, hello world would be printed as an output. But in case we put a hash in front of print world, there would be no output. It would just be a guideline for the interpreter to understand that it is just for your knowledge, right? So comments are basically for the purpose of letting either you or the programmer who reviews your code know what the code is solving, what your code performs. And it is a very good habit to mention comments every time you try to write a code. so that the next time you open it and you try to review it, you're able to understand what your code tries to present. So let's have a quick view on some of the examples of comments. For example, we write river name 1 is equal to Ganga. So always remember that a comment can follow a line of code, right? So this is actually an inline comment. Moving on to the next example, river name 3 is equal to Nile hash long. Hash here is a part of the text and does not start a comment. Always remember, you should not get confused with this sentence which says, here we are defining a variable, right? Nile hash long value. So here hash doesn't start a comment. It is part of the text. Okay? So now there are a few important points regarding comments. So the hash character must be specified before every line at the beginning when you want to start a comment. Then next comes that each line of a block comment starts with a hash and a single space. For example, in this first example, river name 1 is equal to Ganga, there is a hash and a space, right? So third point, which is the most important point, which says that comments do not nest, which simply means that a comment inside a comment is not possible. It is not permitted in Python to have a comment inside a comment, right? Coming to the fourth point, one cannot write comments inside string literals which are enclosed between single quotes or double quotes. Just in the earlier example where we saw Nile hash long, it wasn't considered a comment because it was enclosed in single quotes, right? So fifth point, anything written after hash in a particular line is ignored by the interpreter. Meanwhile, it does not form part of the executable code in the program. Starting with what are identifiers and keywords. Let's have a look at what are identifiers first, right? So you always need to identify entities. For example, this is a cat, I am a nana, and so on, right? So identifiers in Python can be of any length, but there's a point that they cannot start with a digit, right? They cannot start with a digit. And the only special symbol allowed is an underscore. Let's have a look on a few examples now, right? So we have string underscore 1. It has a lowercase letters, right? Lowercase letters and underscore and a digit 1. Make sure to check that it does not start with a digit, right? It has lowercase letters, yes. The only special symbol used is an underscore, right? So it is a valid identifier. Moving on to the next example, my class. It is a mixture of lowercase and uppercase letter, thus making it a valid identifier again. For example, we had an identifier which was code. So will it be a valid identifier? Let's check. So we have a combination of lowercase, uppercase and a digit, right? Which is again a valid identifier. But in case it started with 1, then it would definitely not be a valid identifier. Why? Because it cannot start with a digit. An identifier cannot start with a digit, right? So I hope this is quite clear now. What is an identifier? Well, they are words that are used to identify entities, right? They are the identifying words. Moving on to what are keywords. So in Python, keywords, we say they are the reserved words. Okay, there are some special words which cannot be used elsewhere. They have a special meaning to them. So as of the latest version of Python, which is 3.12, there are 39 keywords at present. Supposing, for example, you want to know the list of all the keywords that can be used by you. So, how can you get to know that? We have a special code for that. You write import keyword print keyword.kwlist. The first line imports the keyword module, and the second line prints the entire list of the keywords that are contained in Python, right? So you'll get all the keywords. Now there is a built-in function in case you want to confirm whether a given word is a keyword or not. So you can use the built-in function that is keyword, and it will return a boolean value, either true or false, right? Moving on to the next. Let's take an example now. Supposing we want to check whether Python is a keyword or not. We all know by now that Python is not a keyword, right? So we write import keyword print keyword.isKeyword, where isKeyword is the function, and inside the braces you mention Python in single quotes. Obviously, it will give the value false as it is not a keyword, right? For example, now we want to check whether if is a keyword or not. So we'll use the same syntax for that, and this time it will give the value as true because if is a keyword in Python. Alright, so I hope it has been pretty simple till now. Okay, so let's get back to what are variables and assignment. So, variables, they are actually the reserved memory locations used to store values, right? For example, you write a is equal to 10. So, we are assigning 10 to a variable a. So, there would be a reserved memory location stored for that value, which is 10 here. We always use an equal to operator to assign values to a variable. Alright, so there are a few examples we'll consider now which will make the concept much more clear. So we write counter is equal to 100. Here 100 is the value assigned to the variable named counter, which is an integer assignment because 100 is an integer, right? So when you write print counter, it will print the value 100. Coming to the next example, which says miles is equals to 1000.50. This value over here is a floating point value, right? So it is being assigned to the variable named miles. So when you print miles, it will fetch the value which is 1000.5, right? Next comes name is equal to John. Here John is a string value, right? So when you print name, it will print the value John. So all these will be the outputs for the above code that we have written. Alright. Next, there's a very important concept of chained assignment. For example, you want to assign the same value to a number of variables. So in that case, there's no need to write a is equal to 10, b is equal to 10, c is equal to 10 three times, right? There's no need for that. Python allows you chained assignment with which you can write it in just one line, and you can assess the value for any variable that you want, and it will print the same value. For example, you try to print a, it will give 10. You try to print b, it will again give 10. You try to print c, it will print 10 again. Next, there are 6 dimensions of a variable that you must know, right? So first is the name that we have already discussed, which is the name of the variable, which helps you fetch the value which is stored in it in the reserved memory location, right? Next comes the data type, right? So it helps you determine the type, memory required, and the operations that can be performed on it. For example, we have done integer point assignment, right? We have done float point, we have done string. So you can perform all the arithmetic operations on only the integer, right? integer or the float values. So that ways a data type helps you decide what all operations can be performed on a variable. Next comes the address of a variable, which specifies where in the memory is your value stored, right? We already learned that variables are the reserved memory locations that store a particular value in memory, right? Next we have value, right? So what is a value? It is actually the data that is held by the variable. Alright? The data held by the variable is the value. For example, we have name. Supposing we write name is equal to Rahul. Right? So here name is the variable. Rahul, that is the value that is held by the variable. Right? Next, there are very important concepts: scope and lifetime. So scope is of two types. There's global scope and there is local scope. So in global scope, they try to help you understand that the variable that you have defined can be accessed anywhere within the code, right? It's not important that you can access it in just a block of code, but you can access it anywhere in your program. Next, local scope. It means that only within a specific block of code where you have defined the variable can you assess the value stored in it, right? So, it simply says that the scope is, it actually specifies where in the program the variable can be assessed, right? Next comes lifetime. For how long it can be assessed and it is stored in memory. For how long? Because after a certain point in time, you need to free the memory. It's finally time to start writing our very first code. Let's start with the print statement. Let's try to print hello world. Let us see if it runs. So yes, hello world gets displayed. Now we can even try printing your name. Let's try to run this now. Yes, both statements get printed. For example, I want to comment this statement. Let's comment it out. We already know that it is commented using a hash symbol in Python. These are all strings, right? Simple text. Now what if we want to print an integer? Let us see if it works without double quotations. So yes, 12 is printed. Similarly, you can try to print rest of the integers. Let's try a negative integer. Yes, 12 and minus 32 are the outputs. Similarly, you can try a number of expressions of this sort, right? Now let's try to print an expression. Let's try to solve addition and see if it is possible. The answer should be 30. And yes, 30 is the answer over here as well. We've learned about variables, so let's try to create a variable. Let's assign value 10 to a value of 20 to B, a value of 40 to C, and let's try to perform average of three numbers over here. So the average has to be A plus B plus C by 3. But here remember that braces play a very important role. Now let's try to print the average. Let us see if the output is correct. So yes, It shows a long value, a float value. Let's try to typecast it to int. We just want the integer. So yes, we get 23. Right? For string concatenation. This is a very useful concept when it comes to concatenating two strings. For example, we print two strings separately. We print hello and we print everyone. Let's see the output first. So hello and everyone are printed in two separate lines, but we want them to be together, right? You can write it like this, right? It prints that. You can even make use of string concatenation, which is actually the plus symbol. Let's try to run it. Yeah, this time there is no space in between hello and everyone. For that, you can even add a space using the plus symbol. Let's run it again. And yes, line number 13 displays hello everyone, right? Now next, let's know a little bit about special characters in Python. For example, you want to print next line, right? So let's try to print Python programming. Simply hello and then programming. Let's change this hello to Python and comment this one out. We've learned about string concatenation, right? Use the plus symbol for concatenating two strings, that is joining them together. So if we run this, we'll get Python and programming in two separate lines. But supposing you want to use a single print statement. In that case, you can make use of the /n symbol, which is similar to moving to a new line. There's no need for a new print statement. Let's try to run this. So yes, it gives the same output, right? So this is how it works. Let's try to run this. It gives Python programming. You can try a number of patterns of that sort, right? Now we have learned about comments, variables, some special characters that can be used, how to use the print statement, how you can solve expressions, right? So now what if you want to include, you might be noticing here that in the print statement, we're always writing the things in double quotes. But what if we want the double quotes to be there as well inside the string that we are printing, that we are getting as the output? So in that case, we'll see how the single quotations and the double quotations work together. Let's try to write, she said. Python is fun. Let's close these quotations and let's see if it works. So, yes, the double quotations are there, right? So you can always include the thing you want to be displayed in double quotations this way. This is actually a very important point to remember, that you can do it using this. So now let's try to get all the keywords that we have in Python, right? We talked about a code which said import keyword, and then in the next line you print keyword dot kw list, right? This line contains all the keywords of Python kw list. Here we are importing the keyword module. Let's try to run it and see if the keywords get displayed. Yes. So here are all the keywords that are there in Python at present, right? So now, for example, we want to check whether a word is a keyword or not, right? So in that case, you would be importing the keyword module. You've already imported that, so no need to do it again. You write print keyword, right? Dot is keyword, which is the built-in function that we use, and in brackets, you can mention the word that you want to check. For example, we want to check whether Python is a keyword or not, right? So let's try to run this and see. So it says false. And we all know that Python is not a keyword, right? So let's comment this first. Let's try some other word. For example, we want to check if the word if, right? Let's try to run it. Yes. So there's control statement, if else statement, where if is a keyword. Similarly, you can check for the rest of the keywords. For example, let's try this word, try, right? We already have the list of keywords with us. The answer should be true. Let's try to run it, and yes, it shows true, right? So let's move to our next code now. Let's talk about variables now. For example, we create a variable named counter which stores the value 100, which is obviously an integer assignment, and we try to print counter. So let's see, will it fetch 100 or not? So yes, it displays 100 as the output, which means we are able to get the value, right? Now, let's try to create some more variables and get hands-on experience for that, right? For example, we want to create multiple variables. For example, name is equal to Ananya, right? You can write city is equal to Delhi, age is equal to 25, and so on, right? And you want to print the variables name, city, and age. Let's try to run this code, and yes, everything gets printed in one line, right? For example, we can even write name is equal to, right, this thing, and then city is equal to this thing, and then age is equal to this thing. Let's try to run this. Let's comment this out first. Let's try to run this code. So yes, we get the desired output, right? So now, for example, we want to print variables in a sentence. We've already done that, right? A comma after the thing that you want to print, right? Here name is a variable, so we add a comma before that so that it can fetch the value of it, right? Now supposing earlier we had age is equals to 25, right? And now we want to change the age is equal to 50, right? So is it possible to change variable values? Let's try to print the age again. Let's see. Earlier, what if we print age when we have defined it as 25? Let's see what it shows. So, earlier the age was 25, so it prints 25 for this one. And when we update the value of age to 50, so it gets updated to 50, right? So it is possible to update the variables, right? Now let's see. You've already done identifiers, right? For example, we try to name a variable with this, right? We already know that we cannot start the name of an identifier with a digit, right? That's why we were getting an error. Now let's try to print it. So yes, it works now. So earlier it was an invalid way of writing the variable. Okay? Now let's try to print. For example, we want to know the type of the variable, right? We want to know the type of name, which we already know is a string. Let's see. We use the type function for knowing the type, right? So it says class string, which is absolutely fine, right? Now, even for age, we can try doing that. Type of age. Let's try to run it. And it shows integer, right? So that way, using the type function, you can get to know the data type of the variable, whether it is a string, integer, float, a boolean value, right? So now, this is, we are doing it in a very normal way, right? So for example, in case you want the user to give you the input, so in that case, what would you do? Because mostly it works that way. The user inputs his details, right? So for example, you want to get the input for the name of the user. So in that case, you can use the input function and ask for the name of the person, right? So let's comment all of it and then run this code. So here you notice it asks for enter your name and you have a cursor over here. So you can write any name over here. You've given your name Anna. It gets stored. And when you try to print your name now, it will ask for your name, right? Give your name and it will print Anna, right? So that's how you take the input, right? Using the input function. And always remember that the input function returns a string. Whatever data type you're entering, it will convert it into a string and return it, right? That is why, in case you want to get the age, we all know that input returns a string, right? So we need to typecast it to input, to int, right? Now, supposing we ask for the age and we want to print the age of the person. So we'll run it. For example, your name is Rohan. Rohan gets displayed. Your age is 56. So 56 gets displayed, right? So the input function always returns a string. And you need to typecast it to the data type of the variable that you want, right? For example, let's try to add two numbers. For example, we take the input for a number A, right? We take the input for a number A, we take the input for another number B. Okay. And then we try to print A plus B. Let's see if this code works. Try to guess it and let me know if it will work. Right? It asks for an input, another input, and then here, you see, it shows 10, 20 in a concatenated way. We discussed the concept of concatenation, right? String concatenation, remember? So that's how it works. Remember, input function always returns a string. So A will be a string, B, which is 20, will be a string, right? So string concatenation will happen in this case. You need to typecast it to the data type of the variable you want. We want int, right? We want to perform arithmetic operation. So now this code will work perfectly. You enter your values and you get the answer, which is what, right? This is a very important topic that you must remember always, right? So similarly, you can perform the functions for area of a rectangle. If you want to perform a greetings program, student information, you can even create your own profile, your details, student details, right? So I'll ask you to write a few programs and you can practice it in your free time. Like you can print your favorite movie, store your age in a variable and then try to display it, right? Take the name as input, convert temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit or vice versa. Find the perimeter area. You can try these programs.